Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello. We
Happy
need like
Tuesday.
some
Huh?
theme music. We really should have some theme
We do.
music.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
No.
Neither
Oh
one
my
of
goodness.
us are gonna be
Huh?
actually. We're not gonna be singing it
Oh,
ourselves.
okay.
That's not it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we would have to definitely come up with something appropriate.
Right. Something exactly. Well, you guys know what day it is. It's Tuesday night, so that means that we are talking travel. Say hello, drop us a comment. We want to know how your Tuesday was. So, Carrie,
Yes.
how was your Tuesday?
It wasn't bad at all. It's a week. I'm just looking forward to next week. So yeah, but I mean, it hasn't been a bad day. It hasn't been a bad week at all. But I'm ready for it to be over.
You
Ready
got your
for the
first little
holidays.
bit of snow?
Yes, yes. It's
Yeah.
very exciting. Had some snow last night and this morning. So I mean, I was a little disappointed it wasn't more, but somebody said just wait. It's
Just wait.
coming. It's
There's more to
coming.
come. There's
It's
more
more
to
to come.
come.
It's gonna happen.
It's going to happen. So we got a couple people checking in. Hey, Janicia. Hey, CJ. Thanks for hopping on.
Hello, hello.
It was we had just a few little dust of snow. I mean, not much at all. I don't even know if it hit the ground, but I'm not rushing it. I'm not rushing it
It's just
because it's
our.
going to come.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know it's gonna be for real, and it won't be pretty after a
Hmm.
while, So I know it's gonna, wear off pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
I took what we got today. It was the first little run of it, so we had to talk to the pups. Come up with a game plan on what they're gonna be doing. But I tell you, them dang on dogs that got into the mud and came in just dripping mud all their face and feet. So CJ had to give them a bath.
Um, Janicia, where's she trying to log in from? So we are streaming to three locations. We're streaming on to the Travel Talk Tuesday page, Rad Travel Group page, as well as Living the Rad Travel Life. So where is she trying to log in from? Because you said her feed isn't loading. All right, so hopefully she's able to get on and you guys can get on. Tell us how your week was. We want to know. It's Travel Talk Tuesday, so what we're going to talk about tonight. Hey, Janicia, I see you got on here. Thank you.
Yay!
Yes. So we're talking about um ports of embarkation for cruises. Invite a friend, especially if you have a cruise loving friend. Invite a friend. We want to know
Definitely.
what their thoughts are, what they think about cruising, and what locations they prefer to cruise from.
What ports do they like?
Yeah. So we want to talk about that. We want to know what their thoughts are. I'm Andrea. I'm from Rad Travel Group with
And
my
I
sidekick.
am and Carrie from Cat Travel Group.
So, I mean, when we think about, we're only talking cruise ports in the United States today, in the
Right.
continental United States at that, because there are so many, there are so
Oh,
many cruise ports.
thousands.
Yeah, we often think about, oh, Florida first, at
Hmm.
least I do, just because there's so many. But I guess depending on where you live, if you live in the DC area, you might think about Baltimore first because it's so close.
Do you know
Um,
about how many we have? How many ports we have here in the
we have a
U.S.?
lot.
We do. We
Yeah,
have
we do have a
over
lot.
50 though. Over 50 ports.
That's a lot. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
lot.
You wouldn't think
Absolutely.
so, because a lot of times we talk about the main ones, certain ones over and over again. That hit the
Right.
Caribbean, but there's over 50 ports here in the U.S.
Yeah. There's so many. Um,
Hmm.
when I think about the, ports of embarkation, I often think about, okay, is it easy to get from the port to the cruise, from the hotel or from the airport to the port?
Hmm.
Is there anything to do in the city if I get there a couple of days in advance? But then also, what does it cost for a hotel in that city?
Right.
Because some cities hotel prices a little bit higher. And then when you get off the ship and you got to go back to the airport, is it easy to get taxi or is it easy to get an Uber? Are they going to be surge pricing? So there's a lot of different things that I kind of think about when I am, thinking about where I'm
Cruising.
going to be leaving from.
Right.
Often you've heard me say it, this, Gary. I cruise for the ship itself.
Right.
They're doing so much, they're so different. They add new stuff every single week or every single year, I should say, every time they build a new ship. So that's where I am, what I'm thinking about. But this last cruise was my first time from the port of Galveston. And while the ship was amazing, it got me thinking about ease,
Different ports. Mm-hmm.
different ports. So the cruise left from the port of Galveston. Closest airport, of course, is going to be Houston Hobby. But then you also have Bush International Airport. So you got two airports you could go into. And one is over an hour away, about 70 to 90 minutes, depending on traffic. Well, and Houston traffic can be horrible.
Right.
The other may have been about 40 minutes. So it's, kind of not something you want to wing it.
No.
You want to have a plan in advance of how you're going to get from that airport, to wherever your destination is. The other thing was, where did I want to stay? Because I kept going back and forth. Remember, we were talking about that, like, do I want to stay in Houston for the one night before, or do I want to go ahead and go to Galveston the night before? So it's something to consider, because I got there early enough, and I hope you all are leaving at least one day in advance. Don't miss your ship.
They will leave you. So we keep trying to warn you about these cruises now. So you need to make sure you make some plans. And the best bet is to get there at least a day early, just in case there's some cancellations of flights or anything.
Yes. So thinking about that and what I wanted to do. So those were some of my thoughts. I ended up going straight to Galveston, spending the night in Galveston, walking a little bit on the boardwalk and checking that out. Mm-hmm. But again, that's one of those things of, is there something you can do there? Is there something that if you're taking your kids, something that can entertain them?
So in Galveston, was that a good port, would you say? Or I know location was not the best as far as the drive. But would you say that they, a lot of good restaurants, amenities around, stuff with family? What would you say?
I do. I would say definitely there's restaurants, and they have the boardwalk, and what you would normally see on the boardwalk with a Ferris wheel. But I just definitely, you have to plan in advance. You don't want to get to Houston and then try to figure it out because of the distance. And also because I was a little late, kind of deciding where I wanted to go. I don't think I booked my transportation until the day before. Actually, no. I booked my transportation in the airport that day.
Oh, wow.
So I booked my airport the day of, and he was like, "You on my last spot,"
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, really?" So, but at that point, the cost is a factor, because we're talking about a good amount of time distance between. I came into Bush to Galveston. Like I said, that's over an hour drive. So if you are a family of 3 or 4, a family of 5, you might actually want to consider renting a car, because I think the transportation, it may have been about $70 each way. You know what I mean?
And so was it $70 per person each way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, folks, think about that. If you got kids and you got your husband and everything, $70 per way, per person.
Yeah.
That gets costly.
It gets costly. So you might want to consider that. If you have more people, you definitely want to look at maybe renting a car is cheaper, than actually paying for 5 people to be on this shuttle. So renting a car and then parking at the port, because most of the ports have parking, So that is something that I always think about. The hotels on that strip, they're older hotels. So again, that's something to consider. If you are like my buddy here who's hotel bougie, it may not be the way to go for you. You may actually do better off actually staying in Houston, because the hotels are a little bit older. And so they're not, they're not the nicest hotels.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So I think that
is, if your hotel bougie, you want to keep that in mind. So,
yeah. You definitely might want to have stayed in Houston, because down in Galveston, they were not. I don't know if they even have anything that's 5-star, Carrie. Honestly, I don't know. Yeah. I know. It's not for you. It's not for my buddy here. because she is hotel bougie. I was actually did have a view of the ocean. You know, I had a room that
Okay.
had a balcony view of the ocean. But it was a Holiday Inn, so it was your standard, like 3-star situation.
Yeah, folks, I
Who's
mean,
this?
I can do
Who's
a
this?
Holiday Inn from time to
I'm
time.
loving it. Somebody says I'm hotel selective. Please make yourself known. I need to know who you are. But no, but Carrie, honestly, like even for me, I was just kind of like, yeah, no, man.
Okay, okay. If you telling me that, then no, it would.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
would.
for the one night, I got the deal, right? But if I
Right.
were going to come in 2 days in advance and actually spend some time in the city, no, I need to stay in Houston.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would stay in Houston for sure. Um, I'm gonna get your question, CJ. I like that. What were you doing the most? Um, so you know, so those things that I like to consider the ease, the convenience of being able to go from the airport, to the hotel, then straight on to the port. Are there things to do in that city? What
Mhm.
is the cost for hotels? And then when you get off the ship, because people who did not make their arrangements ahead of time, when they got off the ship, I I had arrangements ahead of time, but I started looking at Uber and Lyft. They were like $200 because there was that surge pricing. So you
Folks,
don't want to do that.
that's why
You
we
don't
telling
want
you
to
this
do
stuff
that.
because this happens, and then you had a good vacation, and now you done got back. You're like, oh, we just gonna call it Uber. We're gonna get up in it, and the next thing you know, you got a $200 bill
Right.
extra for
And it
getting to
wasn't
the
even
airport.
like, the black. It was like your basic Uber. Okay. I looked
It's
at
like you
Uber
probably
and
sharing it with
Lyft.
somebody else too.
Yes, exactly. I did Uber and Lyft to both airports.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, this price is unreal. So this is not what you want to do, people. So I want to say, so Galveston and Orlando, they're about the same for me when it comes to this whole situation. Because again, Port Canaveral is about an hour or so from the Orlando airport. You got the
Mhm.
same situation where you can go right down onto the beach. However, the whole beaches in Port Canaveral do look better than the ones in Galveston. So
Right.
that one is a little bit better. But you
Now,
still got that amount of time, that hour drive between the two.
do they have for Galveston? I know in Port Canaveral they have parking that's like right there. Is the
Mm-hmm.
same for Galveston as well?
Yes, they do have parking there. And what you can also find in Galveston, if you and Port Canaveral, probably all of them, the park and
Mhm.
ride. So you can park and leave your car at the airport, and not the airport, but at the hotel, and then get on the ship, maybe with a free shuttle or a low cost shuttle, and it won't cost you very much. So
Yeah,
that's another
that's
option
true.
too.
Yeah.
But even Port Canaveral, if you get to a family of 4, you might really want to start looking at a rental car because of the
Mhm.
cost when it comes to um, the cost of the shuttle. So those two, that's kind of my warning on the ones that are kind of like, really, really evaluate that. Now, what Port of Galveston has going is same thing as Port Canaveral. They're larger ports now, so they get those bigger ships. So
Okay.
now the Norwegian Prima, which is the one I was just on, which is amazing. The home will be Galveston.
I'm trying to get
Um,
on that one. I'm
yep,
trying to.
Allure of the Seas, which is an Oasis class ship from Royal Caribbean. It also now comes out of Galveston.
Oh wow.
So yeah,
That's interesting.
so they have, because they did that renovation and they can take those bigger ships now.
Mm.
And then Port Canaveral, that's where you have the Carnival Mardi Gras, which is one of their larger ships. It has the roller coaster and everything like that on it.
Mhm.
So, you got that plus and minus, right? So you got the
Right.
bigger ship, though, but you have the other situation.
Right.
Um, let's say,
Not
I think
being
one thing
port.
I definitely wanted to mention was the cities I thought that maybe was the most fun, and I would go with New Orleans. New Orleans might be the most fun because to spend a couple of days in New Orleans before your cruise, like that's a lot of fun.
I love New Orleans. So
Yes,
that's a good one.
that's a good
And
one.
does it have some of the bigger newer ships that come out of there as
It
well?
doesn't. So
Oh
that's the
man.
downfall, right? So
I
CJ
mean, you
asked
gotta
this
tell me where the
question.
good and bad there.
Yeah, yeah. CJ asked the question: which of the ports have I been to which have the most convenient airport hotel situation? New Orleans is one of them. because
Okay.
you got the airport is right there, and then your cruise leaves out of there, and you got good food. But it's the smaller, it's the smaller ships that come out of there. All of the older ships, you don't really get your newer ships. But another positive from New Orleans is that you can go to Norwegian's private island in Belize because
Oh,
it's close, from where it leaves. It's one of those options. So,
nice. Okay. I
plus
mean,
and
man,
minus, plus
there's
and
a lot
minus.
of balancing here. Like which one? I mean, is there one that gives you the most? Location, things to do, cost effective, nice hotels and food. Out of all the ones you've done, what would you say is pretty much, your favorite?
The one that I feel like gives you the most, the absolute most. Crystal said the New Orleans pre-cruise startup, and she's right. You can do
Okay.
that. The one I think that gives you the absolute most is probably Fort Lauderdale,
Okay.
because flights into Fort Lauderdale are typically reasonable. You
Mhm.
can get a hotel in Fort Lauderdale that's pretty reasonable. You can get some of the bigger ships out of Fort Lauderdale and some of the nicer ships. You can get your 4 days, you can get your 7 days. You can get that longer and short cruise coming out of Fort Lauderdale, and it's easy. I mean, it's
Okay.
like, okay, you fly right in, and you can get in an Uber and get to your hotel. You could just go straight from the port back to the airport. So it really does cut down, even if you don't plan ahead, which we always advise you do. In with the
Mhm.
Fort Lauderdale, you can pretty much do that without any issues.
Okay.
Yeah. And while I don't advise it,
And
but
not a,
some people come in the morning of and then go straight to the cruise port from Fort Lauderdale because it's
and they
not a
don't
far
really have the
distance.
whole surge in pricing and stuff.
I have not seen that one for a lot of the distance is also very short,
Right. That's what I'm
So
saying, and that's
yeah,
which is probably why they don't do that.
yeah,
Whereas the other ones they
hmm
know it's going to be far, so they put the
yeah,
price up. So that's a good one.
yeah. And when I compare that to Miami, because obviously Miami gets a lot of ships every single day and a lot of variety in your ships, but typically flights into Miami are more expensive and the hotels in Miami are much more expensive.
Lord, don't we know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
don't buy them dang on drinks.
Right. Okay. If you're trying to stay on South Beach, it's hot. You're going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
still mad about that drink I got for breakfast. It was an $11 breakfast, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get these two drinks," and it's like buy one get one free. And my bill came out to $80 some dollars. Like, whoa, whoa, wait a
Oh,
minute.
whoa, whoa,
Yes,
whoa.
it was ridiculous. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
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 true. But
quite
I do love
expensive.
Miami still. Still love
Yeah.
you
I do
guys.
love Miami. And I have sometimes flown into Fort Lauderdale and then cruise out of Miami.
Okay.
I've done that. You just have to consider that it's still a further distance. Now,
Mhm.
coming back, when you come back into the port of Miami and you need to go to the airport of Fort Lauderdale, you want to plan that in advance, because if you don't, this was a few years ago, it was $90 in a taxi, you know.
Wow.
So you want to make sure you have a shuttle. And of course, the cruise lines have the big buses themselves. So if you don't want to go with a different shuttle, you can get on the big Greyhound that the cruise line has. I think they seat like 50 people. It's just not my preference.
Mhm.
I'm good. I want to be
Are
on
there
there without
any
it.
ports that you feel like it's easy to get on and disembark from? Like any other ports,
Um,
I would say that.
New Orleans is easy. It's not very large, so it's easy to get off there. Um, Tampa's pretty easy too.
Okay.
Tampa's easy, and Tampa has some other really good factors when it comes to flights into Tampa are reasonable.
Hmm.
Hotels in Tampa are reasonable. So Tampa's another good option. The negative part for Tampa for me is the fact that they don't get new ships.
Mm.
So if you're doing the older, a 4 or 5 day, then you can do Tampa. But if you're looking for the new, you just have that, you got to have those larger ports that can handle that.
That makes sense.
So we talked quite a bit about the Florida ports. Jacksonville is still out there, y'all. Don't forget about Jacksonville.
Don't sleep on
um, yeah,
it.
I don't know. I haven't flown out of Jacksonville, and I think they may only get about one ship or so. But Jacksonville is an option. And then, of course, if we go on up the East Coast, we have Baltimore. There's
Mhm.
Boston, um, and both of those have new ships. There aren't any new ships coming out of Baltimore that I know of right now, not from what I found. But the good part about Baltimore is that typically flights into BWI are reasonable.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's
And
a good
probably the
option.
locations it goes to is going to be, different from the ones that's coming out of Florida too.
Right. Yeah. And if you're interested in those Barbados, oh, not Barbados. Is it no, it's not Barbados. Bermuda. If you're
Bermuda.
interested in that Bermuda where it stays like 3 days in Bermuda, those
Mhm.
typically come from either Baltimore or New York, anywhere on the East Coast.
Okay.
So those are some good options. I like the idea of New York because it's New York,
Girl.
right? you know, um, but hotel costs are high. But it is
Right.
the idea of being in New York.
Right.
So
You can always
that's a
add that
cool
on to the
idea.
beginning of your trip, to the end of your trip, especially you haven't gone, just include it all and just really enjoy it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Charleston, South Carolina, they are making some renovations on their ports, but Carnival put out a notice that I think after 2024, there aren't any more ships going to come out of Charleston.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, I know.
That's
So,
interesting. I wonder what that's
and that's
about.
where I think the city doesn't want it anymore because they're renovating their port. They're going to put some money into investing in their port, but it sounded like they're not going to have more Carnival ships coming out of there.
Hmm.
Which that's a cool location for people that are on that side of the country that they can just drive to.
Right.
But it looks like after 2024 or so, they're not going to have any more ships coming out of there. Um, I like the LA. LA gets a little bit of halfway in between for me just because you can go to LA and LA is cool.
Right.
There's things to see, there's things to do. So you have the entertainment pre-cruise or after cruise, whichever way you
Hmm.
want to do it. But LAX, and the traffic, make sure you go a
Okay.
day before. A day before. Don't try to do
Do
it
it that
that day.
same day.
You just
Yeah.
can't do it. Not LA. I wouldn't try it. I would not. Um, I'm looking forward to Seattle. I haven't been to Seattle, but leaving out of Seattle because I want to do the Alaska cruise.
Hmm. That seemed like that would just be kind of gorgeous. I mean, again, I would tag on to that. Just spend a couple of days in Seattle
Absolutely.
before or after, probably before, and then get on
Hmm.
that cruise because it just seems, yeah, that it's just
Yeah.
gorgeous. Yeah.
And it's like it's a little bit it's further out, so it's not a place you go. You might not go back in a year or two. So
Right.
spend that time while you're there, already there 2 or 3 days before, and actually get a chance to see Seattle. I think the same thing with LA. If you've never been to LA, if you can take 2 or 3 days extra and check out the city,
Yeah.
and
That's
make sure you go
always
to
good.
Roscoe's Chicken
You're
and
going to a
Waffles.
new city. I would definitely tag on, a day or two to check out that city. Again, like Houston. If you're
Hmm.
going out of Galveston, go ahead, tag that time on. Like before, or after your trip. I say before. I always
Before
say
I do
before.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that way you get to see a couple of different places, a new city here in the U.S. and then where you going over to your vacation. So
Right. Yes, I agree. Sometimes when your cruise is over, you're kind of ready to go home.
yes,
You
I
know,
know. That's why I'm
so
like, yeah,
before,
I know how I
yeah,
am.
before get it, see the sights in that city, try a different restaurant, get a walk, walk around the city, just kind of get a feel for it. I really think,
Hmm.
a day or two before is it's fun to do.
I
Fun to do
agree.
that.
Any
Especially in some of
questions?
those cities like, like New Orleans or Baltimore, even Boston. Now, Boston is a really cool walking city, a great city, good food, good seafood, a lot of history if you're
I
into
already have a
that.
hotel I want to stay at in Boston too.
Yes. But that's where I think it gets you because Boston hotels can be quite pricey.
I know. I know.
So,
The one I want to stay at is. I'm like, but
yeah. So sometimes, maybe one night before you can do, I don't know, about 2 to 3. I don't know. If you plan in advance,
it depends.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And the
that's a
time of
nice
year
one.
and everything like that. So it may not be too bad.
You're right. And I think another great thing about the ports like Boston, Baltimore, New York, as you mentioned this before, you go to some different destinations than the ones down on the, in Florida.
Hmm.
So there's always a cruise I think that goes like up to Canada, Nova Scotia area. I've always
Right,
thought, oh, that'd be
right.
really cool to do.
And that
Yeah,
would be
it's a
a
cool
fun kind of cruise to do as well.
hmm
If you haven't been in that area, to take a cruise up there and kind of do the
right.
East Coast. So that would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely the fall, it's beautiful on the East Coast. So
Hmm.
that's another opportunity to see the city, if you go a couple of days in advance and walk around and see all the changing of the leaves and all that. You have to do it a little bit earlier though, because their fall comes earlier.
Well, yeah, because it get colder early.
Right. Right. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on cruise ports. Typically for me, I'm looking at the ease and convenience. Are there things to do? Um, what's the cost of the hotels, and then
Transportation
when
to
you
and
need to go
from.
back, what's your opportunities of just easily getting back. So it kind of, every city kind of has a little plus and a minus, almost
Right.
every
So
city
you have to weigh
has
your
that.
decision. You have to kind
Right.
of see what's going to work best for you or your family.
Hmm.
Time, convenience. And just entertainment location wise.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you guys are taking a cruise soon, think about all those things before when you book. Sometimes people just book straight based on, where it's going. And then
Mhm.
they figure all the other parts of it out later.
Yes.
But
But if you take any cruises, post them in the group. Let us see them.
yeah, we
Let
want
us
to
know what
know.
your favorite ports are.
We nosy. We want to know
Now that we are.
that we are. All right. Maybe next time we can talk about actual, the destinations, that you might
Mhm.
want to cruise to. That's a cool one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is it for us tonight, y'all.
Yes.
Next week, catch us here next week and invite one of your friends to join us. All
Definitely.
right.
All right.
Have a
Have
good
a
night.
good